Hi, this is Andy Smith here from my studio in Lidditz, Pennsylvania. The past few days I've been painting snowmen. These are a great way to show you how to use positive and negatives to create volume and texture. I like to start first with a sketch. In here I'll show you my sketchbook. The sketch allows me to familiarize myself with composition, and thus doing it makes it a lot easier to paint. After the sketch, I redraw by hand onto my watercolor paper. And because these are for my painting a day, they're 5 by 7. When we put the 1/2 inch border all the way around, they're 4 by 6. They're taped down here on the side. I'm drawing my subject onto my watercolor board and my watercolor paper. It was sent to me on my iPhone from a friend of a local scene. So I'm just using light pencil sketches to put on the subject. So this is a basis for the painting. This is a foundation. Without this, the painting would not come about for me. Drawing around the hat. It has a nice straw hat. I've drawn that before. I'm familiar with it. I draw that on. This is all freehand drawn. I'll make a big deal about the hat because it'll be very important when it's finished. A nice circle for the snowman's head. I'm filling up the page. It's very important when I finish that this cover the whole page. I overlap lines I can always erase later, and I use my eraser to take off some of those lines, but I'm not worried about them right now. I just want to get the feeling of the snowman. I'm putting the scarf on. Overlap it here. This is why it's important to draw it first. You get a feel for it, and you're drawing on your redraw rather, or you're drawing it on your board is not as hard. It's more intuitive. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be good. I draw the middle of the body down like this. Come around, down, wrap it around the bottom. Let's see, I can make the scarf here, the rest of the scarf down to here. So put a little line there. And remember, I can overlap, and anything I overlap, I can always come back and erase again. I'm drawing lightly, even though the marks look dark, but I'm drawing very lightly, so when I erase, I won't leave a mark on everything. Making references back and forth. I'll put the arms in. I'll move these up a little bit higher, right there. Sweep it up. On the side, there's the arms, and on the other side, really expressive arms. They're just twigs. Now I'll put the eyes in. The nose, which I think is a really small carrot. Just the end of it. Looks like it. that curves around like so. Now the top of the hat. Little dimple there. And last but not least, the rest of the scarf here on the other side. And I'll just drape it down a little bit further, down to here, and have it come up to there. And some buttons. 1, 2, 3, just like that. Now what he's sitting in, just a little bit here, just some notes with the pencil is where I'm going to put some of my dark and light lines. We talked about positives and negatives, so that's how I'm going to create the snow underneath him. Always have to do this, but I like to do it to see where I'm going. He's sitting in a well of snow, so I'm going to show that when I finish. One more thing back here, there was a tree, I like that, alongside the house. Gives a little bit of distance, so I'm just going to draw that in. Tree's darker in watercolor, so I'm not going to worry about the lines that I need to erase or cover. I'm just going to sort of draw it in with a little hint of where I'm going with the branches. And if you practice enough, you won't have to maybe even do this much. You can just put a trunk there and go from there. Okay, I'm ready to start painting my snowman, but first I have to do some background. So I'm going to paint starting from back to front. I'm going to put in the sky first. Mixture of Payne's gray and a little bit of cobalt blue. And I'm going to paint wet into dry and just wash this around. Wash it around the house. There's snow on the roof, so I don't want to get any of that blue into the snow. There we go. Keeping it simple, nothing tricky. Nice snowy day blue gray. And there we go. That's it for the sky. Okay, I used a hairdryer to dry the wash on the sky. My next move is to just do the horizon line. Drip some water on there. And I'm going to mix a little bit of Hooker's green there. A little bit more in with the Payne's gray and cobalt blue that I had. And I'm just going to go across here with the tip of my brush. You can see it's going all over the place because I had dripped water on, but that's okay. I'll be able to control it. I'll just put a little of that on, just like that. Controlling it a little bit more, I take the water out of my brush and I just use that as a sponge to soak up some of the extra water. So I'll put that in. I'm putting in a mixture of Payne's gray and burnt umber around the windows. For the tree, I start with a mixture of raw sienna and Payne's gray, starting at the trunk and working up. I'll get back. After placing and drying the first wash of yellow ochre, now I'm using a darker value to put in texture. It's a straw hat, and I use some vertical strokes and some dry brush just to get a little bit of texture over it. I'm now ready to do the eyes and the buttons on the snowman. I use a mixture of Payne's Gray again and a little bit of burnt sienna. Okay, now I'm ready to put in the carrot nose. Notice on the top of it, I started on the bottom, but notice on the top I left the highlight on it. I'll also use that same color as an underpainting for the twigs that are used for the arms. It makes a good underpainting. Using the tip of the brush, and notice I use one brush for this whole painting. It's very versatile. I can use a large part and the tip just to paint the detail, and I'm just putting in the lines in the scarf using a green. It's a hooker's green, and I'm using it just to put in the detail for the scarf. Yep. I worked on the scarf after drying it and made it a lot darker. Now I'm taking that green that I used in the scarf and just overlaying it on top of the branches for the arms. It makes a very, very good texture on top of the branches. This is the exciting part. We're going to build snow from white paper without using white paint. Now this is a difficult concept for those of you who haven't painted much. You know, when you look at something white, or especially a snowman or something in snow, how you have dark areas and light areas. Dark areas being the positives, light areas being the negatives. Without a contrast, without a balance between positive and negatives, you cannot have snow. That's how you create the texture of snow. So scan your subject. That's what you're using for your subject. Be able to use the lights and darks just like you see them, and dance your brush across the page. I used a mixture of Payne's Gray, a little bit of cobalt blue, a touch of phthalo blue. You start with the lighter colors first. Let them set up and dry because you don't want it running all over the place. And then once those dry, you add the darker colors, creating a deeper contrast and more charactered snow.
You can't fight over it. I'll open a second one if I need to.
After drying my lighter values, I'm adding darker values now. And these darker values will give my snowman more depth.
You like that paper? I'll get you more.
Wow.
I wouldn't judge it on one sheet.
No, I gotta do something else on it. So far, I'm very pleased with it. Because that's what you have to be able to do with snow, is soften it. blend the edges, and this is stuff fought me tooth and nail.
Okay, shall I stop here and let you keep going in the background?
I'm on the coup de grace. In starting to complete my snowman, I have to go around certain areas and make it darker, give the values more richness. So I go around the muffler around his neck. I go around the hat and make that darker underneath the hat, around the eyes to give those sunken in look to his eyes, and around his nose, which is a carrot. I go to the bottom and I just work the darker colors around, giving more depth and more character. I'm concerning myself with the snow that was scooped out to make the snowman. As you look, it's a little bit darker subtly than the snow in or on the snowman. I'm using positive and negatives to sort of denote the shovel marks that were done in the snow. And I work that around, leaving my blue and my Payne's gray and my phthalo blue work into those areas. I'll do both sides and balance it off. I consider my foreground under control, so now I'll move to the background to give the painting a little bit more balance. Using the same colors, although not as dark, but I bounce the color around the dark, leaving light and dark areas as it would in nature when you look at snow. It's not just one solid white color. You have different colors that show how the snow catches and moves the light around. So that's what I'm doing in the background. Look at your subject as you go so you can see where you can put some of those darker and lighter brush marks. If it keeps doing what it's doing now, oh my gosh. This is what I've wanted my other papers to do, to blend like this. See how I can catch that edge and just soften it? See that? And it doesn't die into the paper. Hair dry it. Bring it around. Once it dries. Pay attention to how this is building. You can see me work my darker values. I mixed a little bit more Payne's gray and just a touch of raw sienna in this. And you can see how it makes it move or recede backwards and the snowman comes forward. So this is how we build that little indent behind the snowman where the snow was taken out to make him. It blends. Nice. Nice. Oh, I can't wait to do a still life with this paper. Now I'm finishing off my painting by softening all the edges. You must do this because snow is more convincing when you soften the edges unless it's ice. So I go through from foreground to background with more water than pigment and just work right at the edges of the paint and soften them. Background. Check. I'm putting in the windows and the edge line to show the snow on the roof, and I'm done.